All righty, welcome back from the episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Monday, January 2nd, and we are here. We're going to be back putting out more videos. We've been kind of in and out here just with the holidays and everything else, taking some time off, and finally it's time to turn the page to 2023, and we're going to really start pushing out the videos and keep the content rolling because it's January, Jose, and we're not going to be seeing any more college football after January 9th for about 8 months. So better buckle up and get ready for digging for some content, right?
Yeah, I mean the next time we'll see any kind of football is the spring game, and it's exciting to talk about, but it's nothing of real substance. I guess we got some recruiting, and 2024 recruiting is about to start getting hot over the next few months. So
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? We're already going on in the 2024 class. I know we got a few things in the 23 class, but it's already 2024 class. But so today's video, we're going to be, probably by the title, you can tell that this is just basically going to be a recap of the Cheez-It Bowl, obviously the Cotton Bowl. We could not talk about that game. And then there's two semi-playoff games that were actually really entertaining and probably the best two semifinal games we've ever had in the same year since the start of college, since the start of the playoffs. So, but before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. Like the video, comment on the video, and as you're watching this, be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know what you think about the video or these games and everything else. I'm sure a lot of people will have some opinions on these games. And then subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. We're about to hit 3,000 followers on Twitter. So if you don't follow us on there, help us out. It's free, easy. Everything that we do on here is free and easy. So it helps us out a lot. And we know that you appreciate the content if you do follow and subscribe and like. So we'll get into it. So we're going to start talking about Oklahoma first, because obviously this is an Oklahoma channel. OU ended up losing 35-32 to Florida State. Jose, you got the score prediction and the winner right, on our live stream. That's what I thought. And, I mean, Oklahoma finishes for the first time with a losing record since 1998 after dropping this game to Florida State and going to 6-7. Honestly, though, as much as it sucks to lose, I was pretty impressed. I mean, this was the number 13 team in the country. And I understand we can never be satisfied of, losing a bowl game and being close since we are Oklahoma. But just the way that this season has gone, the motivation that this team had, how many young players were playing, considering how many opt-outs and guys that hit the transfer portal. My initial takeaway, like overall takeaway, is it wasn't too bad. What do you think? What's your opinion on this? And we can get into it.
so I agree. It wasn't too bad, but I did not walk away from that game impressed mainly because of the offense. The defense, I mean, they let up 35 points, so it's tough to say that they did a great job, but it's really just one guy that beat him, and it's the guy that we talked about in the pregame show. And Johnny Wilson, that big ass wide receiver that Florida State has, 202 yards. That just, you couldn't stop him. Even when the defense seemed to have played it right, he was just bigger and stronger. He killed the zone a lot. I mean, his own defense is definitely going to need to improve this offseason. That's something that hopefully they'll be working on heavily. But the offense, to me, was the biggest problem during that game, because we scored 14 points to start the game. Yeah, I believe the second touchdown was scored at the very, very beginning of the second quarter, and then proceeded to not score again. I mean, we got a field goal to end the half, but then we did not score another touchdown until the fourth quarter. That's a lot of time, and Oklahoma's defense at that point was still doing well. I mean, we got them. They were forced out on downs 3 times, punted the ball away a few times, and then, I mean, they started rolling with Johnny Wilson in the second half, but if they just score touchdowns and are able to move the ball like they do in the first quarter for 4 quarters, this team would actually look really, really good. And I don't know if it's hard to say that it's Levy not calling a good game, because you look at the stat line and you have your quarterback goes for 243 and a touchdown and 0 picks. And then your two workhorse backs, who I think were the highlight of the offense, and Javante Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, especially Gavin Sawchuk, go for 108 and Javante Barnes and 100 exactly for Gavin Sawchuk. Like, that is really, really good in the running game, but you can't not score for that long, especially when your defense is keeping the other team from doing anything offensively. Like, it really, realistically, at least could have gone into half with a 10-point lead, a 14-point lead, and it probably would have been a little bit harder for Florida State to mount that stretch of offense in the second half. Oklahoma didn't really start going again until the fourth quarter. Like, you can't do that. And I know I just said it's hard to say it's on Levy, but it really feels like it is, because the the running game was amazing, but they wouldn't do anything off of it. They'd run the ball really well and then try an RPO or just try a shot downfield, but they never try to build off that running game. You never really see play action in Levy's offense, which maybe it's just I don't have a full understanding of what he's trying to do, but typically when you have a really, really good running game, you try to do a lot of play action off of that. You try to continue to build momentum off that running game into the passing game and so on, but that just doesn't seem to exist. Now, I think Dylan Gabriel definitely didn't do amazing either. His run pass, his reading of the defense and RPO plays is never great, and he did hold on to the ball for probably a bit too long. And some of those times he got hit. So, there's those two have a lot of improving to do in the offseason. The offensive line did well, which was a surprise, because you had 3 young guys, a freshman tackle, with Sexton. I know he got hurt pretty early, so then
He got
went
hurt.
on to Aaron Parks, and
So
then
third string there.
and then we had Guyton on the right side, who did well. So, and then a backup center since Rain was out. So you had some holes to fill there
And
throughout the offensive line.
and also Chris Murray didn't play, so Savion Byrd played.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I knew there was someone else I missed. Yeah, Savion Byrd did well. Like, the offensive line as a unit, I'm sure if you look at their individual performances and matchups, they might have done. You had some oopsies here and there, but as a unit, they played well throughout the game. Really, it's the lack of scoring points in the second and third quarter, and that wasn't just a problem during the bowl game. That seemed to be a problem through most of the season. They start off hot in the first quarter. It's like they completely forgot they need to score points in the second and third, and then they try to mount a comeback in the fourth and fell short again. 3-point loss. Like, if you clean that stuff up, if you can score at all in the middle of the game, you're probably in a much better position to win the game.
Oh, I agree. I mean, for sure. They had an opportunity to put this game and open this game up whenever it was 14-3. They stopped Florida State on downs, and then they drove down the field, and then Gavin Sawchuk scored, but there was a holding penalty on Savion Byrd. And at that point, then backed him up. I think he got sacked after that. And then Zach Schmidt missed the field goal, which Zach Schmidt, he's also on alert, because his job is definitely not guaranteed. The way that this season went. I think he went like 12 for 18 or something like that. He didn't have a great season. I know there's going to be an open competition there. And it felt like at that point, because this team is so young and how many young players were playing, they kind of got down on themselves, it seemed like, and then they just kept imploding, and then they just kept hanging around. And then they finally started, like you said, started playing offense again and started scoring. When you look at it as a whole, yeah, the defense, or the offensive line did give up some sacks and gave up pressures, but Dylan Gabriel held on to the ball a long time. And as much as Brandon, whenever we were doing the pregame, whatever preview, and I was talking about Johnny Wilson and Jared Verse, those were the two guys that why Oklahoma lost. And, Brandon said they both sucked, and I get it. But, I mean, Johnny Wilson goes for 202. Justin Broyles, and poor Broyles, I mean, he stood no chance on that huge, down the field late in the fourth quarter. I mean, the guy's like 7 inches taller than him. I mean, you can't really, and even Venables said after the game that they didn't design it to end up being like that. And that's on coaching there. And so they're still trying to figure that out. Jared Verse, I think he had a sack and a half. He was getting all over Dylan Gabriel. And I think part of the problem was how young this offensive line and how much patchwork of an offensive line, third string and second stringers all throughout, was that I don't think Levy really trusted them to generate a lot of time and give a lot of time to Gabriel. And I think Gabriel felt that too and was holding on to the ball. And then all of a sudden he would look around, then he'd take his eyes downfield because he didn't feel comfortable. I mean, it is what it is at this point. But, I mean, like you said, two running backs, Barnes and Sawchuk, two true freshmen, played great. And people are always, asking, why didn't Gavin Sawchuk play this year? You didn't have to play him. You had Eric Gray, who had his best season of his career, and you were able to put Sawchuk on the shelf, redshirt him, get him a year in the system. Now you've got a redshirt freshman running back to go with a true sophomore, Javante Barnes. There's no reason why they should have played. I mean, and he might have played if Eric Gray didn't emerge early in the season, but a guy that had nearly 1,400 yards running on the ground, I mean, there's no reason. And I just think, who if you want to argue that Sawchuk should be before Barnes, that's fine. I think they're 1A and 1B. I mean, they both could be number one running backs, and we could have 2 1,000-yard rushers next year. I'm not saying that for sure, or they might both go for like 800 apiece. So I'm happy with that. Farouk looked good. Mims looked good. In the little bit of passing that we actually did, but we ran the ball a lot. The defense played as well as you could hope. I mean, they're thin. What are you going to do, right? I mean, I think Deshaun White played well, and obviously now he's going to the NFL. Broyles, some people are happy to see him go. I mean, at times he's frustrating, and I get it, but he was the heart and soul of this defense to some degree. And then Stutzman was all over the place. Stutzman, I'm going to tell you what, next year is going to be terrific. And if you think of that linebacking core of Stutzman, Deshaun McCullough, and potentially Jaron Kanek, that's a pretty solid linebacking core if you consider the Cheetah part of that. I mean, that's going to be really good. I felt like a lot of guys got some good playing time as the younger guys. And they were able to stop fourth and shorts. Billy Bowman got a pick. Jeffrey Johnson looked pretty strong. I mean, it sucks to lose, but Oklahoma had a chance to win. If Sawchuk doesn't fumble there, they probably end up winning this game. But I can't say just because Sawchuk fumbled. I mean, they had opportunities elsewhere. It's not just one play, but it's easy to look back at that one play. If they would have went and scored there, it would have probably been a total different ending.
And for those that were asking throughout the season why Gavin didn't play during the regular season, it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with his ability on the field. If you remember what he looked like coming out of high school, entering in the summer, he wasn't not an early enrollee. He graduated high school at normal time in May, and he enrolled in the summer. He did not look like he did during the Cheez-It Bowl. He was skinny. He was fast, but he looked like a high school running back. Now he looks like a college running back, and he's still going to add on more strength on top of what he already did throughout this season. And that's why you redshirt guys. Guys that aren't physically ready to play at the college level need a lot more time with Coach Schmitty to pack on those pounds. Now that he's done so, he's worked hard in the weight room with Coach Schmitty. He's worked with DeMarco and Lebby and on the practice field to get right and learn the playbook. This dude's going to be quite good, and it's going to be scary how much stronger him and Javante are going to be after another off season. And now for Gavin, a full off season with this strength staff to pack on more weight and strength, because he's shifty, and I think what a lot of people were excited about was with his speed, because he is very fast, but he is not scared of contact, and that's something we talked about when we were doing our Who Dat series for that class. Gavin isn't just a speedster. He will put his shoulder down and try to run through some people.
Oh, he definitely will. And Sawchuk, I think I heard it right. Him and McCaffrey are the only two players in the state of Colorado that won 2 back-to-back years of Gatorade Player of the state. Gatorade Player of the Year in the state of Colorado. Him and McCaffrey are the only two in the state of Colorado. That's not bad company to be a part of. I'm not saying he's the next Christian McCaffrey, but anytime you're in the same boat as him, that's pretty good.
Pretty good company.
Yeah. So, overall, it's not bad for what, 500 yards of offense behind a third string and second string lineman all across the board. Obviously, the defense, mainly in the secondary, needs help, and there's help coming. They showed their issues. Johnny Wilson also dropped a touchdown that probably would have went for like 70 yards too in the first half, or early in the second half. I can't remember. So he could have even been closer to 300 yards if we weren't careful. But Wilson was a problem, expected to be a problem. Anytime we had a receiver that was above 6'2", we knew that they were going to be a struggle for Oklahoma. So overall, sucks to lose, but I'm ready to turn the page. And I think we're going to be a lot better next year. I'm not saying national championship next year, but I think this team could be a 9-10 win team, go play in the New Year's Six Bowl, maybe win the Big 12, or at least play in the Big 12 championship. And I think it'll be good.
I agree.
All right. So the fun game. And I know a lot of people probably had a lot of things to say, and we have things to say. Tulane and USC played a little earlier today. Tulane ended up pulling out the victory, 46-45. Man, another great game, exciting game. But I was sitting on the couch and I was thinking to myself, and I was like, man, this is the same team that we watched for years, where you put up 40 plus points and you still somehow lose. And the way that they lost was crazy. I mean, what I always harped on whenever Lincoln Riley left, or I think we did the Bedlam reaction video. It was kind of the whole hodgepodge because Lincoln Riley left at the same time. OU lost the Bedlam game last year because of special teams, where Eric Gray muffed the punt and everything else. And the play that you can go back to, if there's one play, is where Mario Williams on a kickoff goes underneath the ball, muffs it, and it rolls out at the 1 yard line. And then, USC's up 8, and then they 2 plays, and then they get sacked in the end zone, or they get stopped in the end zone for a safety. And then Tulane's only down 6, and then Tulane gets the ball and goes and scores. Lincoln Riley doesn't believe, for one reason or another, that he needs a special teams coach full time. And we saw the special teams, how bad they just fell apart for Oklahoma. And here they are again. And I don't quite understand. I mean, and then Alex Grinch, if he doesn't get canned, I just don't understand why Lincoln Riley's shocked about this defense. He watched it in Norman. Why would he bring him? What do you think? What's your overall takeaway in this game? I mean, I feel for Caleb Williams. I will say this from the very beginning. Caleb Williams is terrific. Caleb Williams could not even will this team past Tulane from the American Athletic Conference.
Tulane got their revenge after getting beaten by Oklahoma last year in a game that should have been a home game for them, but because of the hurricane, and things that were out of anyone's control that happened to be at home game for Oklahoma, and that was probably the sliver of advantage that OU needed to win last year. But Tulane wanted their revenge on Lincoln Riley, and they got it. But you're right. It seems like Lincoln Riley is not fixing the problems that were very glaring in Norman, and anyone that likes to believe themselves to be college football experts, or or people that have really strong opinions on Lincoln Riley one way or another. The one thing that is undeniable is that he is not willing to fix the issues that he has, and has pointed to in the past having a lack of talent to overcome these situations. Lincoln Riley does not have a lack of talent. He definitely did not have a lack of talent at Oklahoma. Did he have the best talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball? Probably not. I think that's fair to say. And we're seeing how it's really affecting Oklahoma now. But he didn't have the best talent on the defensive side. But you have enough talent to at least be competitive and be good. And he was always competitive and good until it came to games that mattered. And I saw a fun fact. Bob Stoops and Lincoln Riley in the last 6 seasons since Lincoln Riley has been a head coach, now have the exact same amount of bowl wins. Bob got one last year after Lincoln left, and pretty much helped Oklahoma during that month span of having instability or perceived instability. Won the bowl game last year, and the one and only bowl game that Lincoln won was with Spencer Rattler a couple years before that. So this dude is having a tough time when it comes to understanding that he's the one that needs to fix the problem. If it's with staff changes or changing up your philosophy a little bit, and when it comes to recruiting, and if you follow recruiting at all like that outside of Oklahoma, or even if you just want to look it up quickly, the USC recruiting class, regardless of their rank, is mainly carried by offensive weapons. I.e., their 5-star quarterback, and then they have 2 5-star wide receivers in Zachariah Branch and Makai Lemon. Their defensive side of the ball is still struggling recruiting wise, which is kind of surprising because pre-Lincoln Riley, USC really didn't have a tough time keeping those California kids in California. And I think their biggest beat, and it was almost Oklahoma's a team that Oklahoma almost lost to. They lost Mateo Uiagalelei to Oregon, a guy that is in Los Angeles. His dad made it very, very clear that they were going to the highest bidder. USC had the advantage in distance, probably had at least were competitive NIL wise, and Oregon pulled out on top. I think a little bit of it probably had to do with Dante Moore going to UCLA and DJ transferring out of Clemson, the brothers wanting to play closer to each other, or with each other potentially. That was not what happened, but they're at least now closer. One DJ being at Oregon State and Mateo being at Oregon. But when Lincoln Riley figures out that he's what needs to change and not or his philosophy probably needs to change and not he doesn't have good enough talent, then he will be able to elevate himself and be not just a great head coach, but a guy that could maybe win a playoff game and maybe even win a national championship. Because no matter how much you hate him, this dude still puts up amazing offenses, puts together really good game plans on the offensive side, but just for whatever reason cannot find the guy to help him on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe he needs to start taking more of a CEO approach to coaching and hire someone that can run his offense, and he just helps with the game planning, and his OC would do the installation so that he can be more involved with the defensive side of the ball for a season or two and getting that side figured out. Because if he is as great as a football mind as some believe he is, it should be something he can resolve in a couple seasons. Now, with firing Grinch, I don't think it would make sense for him, because you brought him from Oklahoma. Why would you just give him one season at USC when you potentially have less talent? Give him a cycle of another cycle of high school recruiting and transfers. Like if he can't put it together next season, can him halfway through the year like he did with Mike Stoops when he first got the reins in Norman. He did not get rid of Mike Stoops as early as some probably wanted him to when he first became the head coach at OU. So he's got a lot of things to answer, and I thought it was interesting that Caleb Williams did not end up attending their post-game press conference because he just won the Heisman. I know it's a tough loss, but you got to face the music. And I think that's going to be something that it probably will not affect his draft stock come next year, but it's definitely going to be something that GMs are going to be curious about. Like, why are you not showing your face as the leader of your team when the situation isn't in your favor? Like, he's going to get drafted to a team that is absolute ass. You're more than likely going to lose more than you win the first year or two in the NFL. You're going to need to show up to those press conferences and speak to why you potentially lost or what you saw on the field.
No, I mean that's a really good point. Yeah, because you are going to go to a team like the Houston Texans or someone like that where they're 2-14 or 2-15, 3-14 on the season, and you're not going to come in and make them a winning team for the playoffs. Most of the time, 99% of the time, it doesn't go like that. I think the big deal why I think that Grinch might need to go is one, I mean, USC, they've got a lot of money and they don't want to wait. And then two, I also think that throughout the season, while they did force a lot of turnovers, they didn't get any better. It felt like, and that was the same thing with Oklahoma. It felt like the entire season, the defense did not improve. It was the same thing no matter what. No matter if it was August or January, it was the same thing and it was bad. And I felt like it was the same thing today for USC. I mean, they gave up 45 or 46 points today. They gave up 47 to Utah, 27 to Notre Dame, and then they gave up 45 to UCLA, and then 17 to Colorado. But then, I mean, then you go to Cal, 35, Arizona, 37, Utah, 43. I mean, that's just, and maybe they do have less talent. I'm not saying that they're the most talented defensively, but if you could at least see signs of improvement. Oklahoma, I mean, where they bottomed out earlier this season, there's definitely some improvement on that defense, and you can see that there's a light at the end of the tunnel per se, and the defensive class that's coming in is strong, and like you see a lot of momentum building on that side. I just don't see it at USC, and I think a lot of boosters are going to think the same thing. And I did think it was interesting that in his press conference, they were asking Lincoln about summing up the USC defense or whatever, and he said that the way that they tackle was a very alarming, very, very alarming. And it's like it's been this way at USC, and then it's been that way at Oklahoma when Grinch was there. They couldn't tackle and make an open field tackle. I don't know. I mean, would you say that USC had the second most talent going into this game on their roster? I wouldn't say so. Tulane, they went from 2-10 to now 12-2 on the year. I mean, Fritz turned them around, and I just thought it was pretty funny that at the end of the day, what bit them was their defense and their special teams. Their offense, Caleb Williams could not will them. When you're trying to carry a team like a USC, you can only do so much. And I guarantee you, if you would have kept Caleb Williams on this Oklahoma team, we would have probably the exact same record right now, or close. 10-2, 11-2, 11-3. I guarantee you that Caleb Williams is that good that Oklahoma would have won those one possession games. They probably would have won all of them, or maybe just lost one of them. And when you have a guy like Caleb Williams, he covers a lot of the bad parts of your team, and he can hide a lot of things. And Oklahoma just didn't have that guy, and USC did. And I just think that people need to realize that record that USC has, they have no business in being in the conversation of being one of the best teams this year. They had no business being in the playoffs. And that's honestly, looking back, Oklahoma had no business in being a lot of the playoff games that they were in. They were just there because no one else had a better record.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't know if you can answer this, or maybe someone in the comments wants to give a whack at it, but the NFL rule to enter the draft is being 3 years removed from high school. If I recall correctly, Caleb Williams did not play his final season of high school football because of COVID. I believe he ended up getting his high school diploma or his GED while enrolled at Oklahoma. He was doing both, finishing up his high school degree and taking college level courses at the same time, preparing to be a quarterback at OU. Is he 3 years? Is he technically almost 3 years removed from college? Could he enter the draft?
I don't believe he can enter in the draft. I think it's 3 years from when you're supposed to graduate high school. Not so much the high school football. I think it's 3 years from when you graduate high school. Because you graduate in May, but I don't know. But I don't think he's eligible because of that. I think it's like 3 years from when you graduate, whether it's, the December or May of your senior year. But I think it's 3 years from there, not so much the football season. Because obviously, if he had the opportunity to enter the draft, there's no reason why he wouldn't enter the draft. I mean, he'd be the number one pick over Bryce Young.
Oh yeah, he'd be the number one pick probably for the last few drafts. I think the only time that there would be a real argument would be Trevor Lawrence's draft a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
I think Caleb Williams probably still take that one because of his a bit better ability to run.
I mean, I agree. And looking back at that game, I mean, it was an exciting game to watch, and I will give that. But USC gave up to Tyjae Spears 17 carries, 205 yards, 4 touchdowns. He averaged 12.1 yards a carry. That's a problem. Michael Pratt only had 8 completions and threw for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a problem. Their offense did as much as they could. It is what it is. And it brought us a lot of joy. I'm sure the people that are watching this brought a lot of joy, and maybe we even have some USC fans lurking. But all I got to say at the end of the day, Caleb Williams is a fantastic ball player. But we try to warn you about that USC defense, or what Alex Grinch does. They run like 3 or 4 plays, speed D, and you probably need to reevaluate your strength and conditioning coach. The yoga is not working out there either.
Something's got to change.
Yeah, and quickly. So kind of talking about the playoff games, I mean, we can kind of put it all into one little segment. I mean, TCU, Michigan, I mean, both games were great. TCU ended up pulling out the victory 51-45. Max Duggan played well. I mean, to some degree, he had a couple picks, but when he needed to turn it on, he did. And he showed why he was a Heisman finalist. Quentin Johnson is a problem, and he was going to be an Oklahoma Sooner until his dad said, no, you should stay. I mean, it worked out for him, but I definitely wish he would have came to Oklahoma. There was a time in that game, in that third quarter, where they could not tackle. It looked like the old Big 12, and they were just running up and down the field. They scored like 44 points in the third quarter combined or something crazy. That was a fantastic game. My question to you is, I'm pulling for TCU, but I have mixed emotions. I'm glad they beat Michigan, but I don't necessarily like the idea of TCU winning a national championship out of the Big 12 before Oklahoma. I mean, Oklahoma's won in the Big 12, but I'm just saying in recent memory, out of the Big 12, it's TCU. I mean, they're the first ones that got a playoff victory for the Big 12. It's a weird feeling because I also think that, say TCU goes on to beat Georgia, or even if they don't beat Georgia, Oklahoma and Texas are leaving the Big 12. There's an opportunity to be the king of the Big 12 here. And I think TCU is showing it's going to be TCU and K-State are going to be the 2 top dogs in the Big 12, in the new Big 12. They're in the DFW area, which is a recruiting hotbed. You're playing in the Big 12. You could be a perennial Big 12 champion or win most of the time. And you have a path to the playoffs all the time. I think TCU could turn into a thorn in Oklahoma's side when it comes to recruiting. I mean, also for Texas and Texas A&M. I think TCU now, while they've caught lightning in a bottle here, with a lot of old guys, seniors, I just think that if TCU, especially if they go on to beat Georgia, they're going to keep a lot of kids in the DFW area, at least in the near future, at home, because you don't need to go anywhere else unless you want to, but you don't have to leave now. I don't know. I have mixed emotions. What do you think?
I agree. It could be a problem for Oklahoma and Texas and A&M and recruiting wise, because Sonny Dykes is without a doubt the best hire of the offseason for head coaching. It's not Lincoln Riley. It's not Brian Kelly. It's not Brent Venables. It's Sonny Dykes by a mile. He took a team that no one expected anything real out of. Some even expected him to be the worst in the Big 12, and he is now in the national championship game. I agree. I'm pulling for the Hypnotoads. I hope they win it. I don't really have mixed emotions about it. The friends I was watching it with we were all originally TCU, on the TCU bandwagon when the game started, and then they realized that, TCU actually isn't going to get absolutely destroyed by Michigan, and they're actually playing the game. Who would have thought that a team's actually going to show up and try to win a football game when it matters most? They quickly shifted over to Michigan because of that thought process. Like, TCU's would be the first to win a playoff game coming from the Big 12, and could potentially be the first Big 12 in the college football playoff era to win a national championship. I don't give a shit about that. That might be an unpopular opinion. Oklahoma, we had our chances and blew them every time that we got an opportunity, especially the Georgia one. Should have won that and been in the national championship against Bama that year, but that didn't happen because of many factors. Squib kick was got a little bit of a deja vu there in the Cheez-It Bowl for the squib kick in that game, but I hope TCU wins. Go Hypnotoads. And yeah, Sonny Dykes, I think it's going to take more than 1 year. Getting to the national championship definitely helps with some of the guys left on the board in the 23 class. I know they're in for 4-star tight end Jelani McDonald, who the rumor is that he's signed already, but it's not publicly known. But it's between TCU and Texas there. Michael Harrison Pilot, a name that a guy we talked about a lot early on in the 23 cycle. He's between Texas and TCU. Like, Texas is going to have more issues with TCU in the near future when it comes to recruiting, because TCU's producing in year one of Sonny Dykes, while Sark the only thing that Texas fans are really proud of this year is beating Oklahoma 49-0. Like, they barely had a winning season, but that's really the only thing they're focused on. Oklahoma's their Super Bowl, while TCU's actually going to compete for a national championship. So if he can even actually compete for a Big 12 and potentially a national championship, or not national championship spot, but a playoff spot next season, the entire college football landscape, I think, will be shifted drastically, because now, like you said, TCU is in the best spot location wise to be recruiting those Texas kids. These guys, for the most part, probably won't have to move very far. Families can drive to them very easily. Austin is, it's a popular city, but it's pretty far from Dallas and Fort Worth area. College Station sucks, and they can't produce winning to save their lives, no matter how much money they throw around. In Oklahoma, as much as we all believe we're heading in the right direction, that is still TBD. Sonny Dykes has to do this look good 1 or 2 more seasons after this, and he's going to make it hard for everyone, not just those 3 schools, but even the SEC, because they recruit Texas very hard as well. Anyone that recruits Texas is going to have a tough time getting those kids out of to at least not really, really consider TCU.
I agree. It is what it is. I'm pulling for the Frogs. It's be good to beat Georgia, of course. And just because OU's going to the SEC, I'm not going to be a part of the whole SEC. I'm not going to be pulling for the SEC and everything. I mean, are you kidding me? So I do agree if they're able to compete for the Big 12 and even a playoff spot next year, even after Duggan leaves and all these players graduate, that's really impressive. I don't necessarily think they can, but I think what they'll be able to do is be like, well, we were in the national championship, or maybe they win. And then over the next 2 or 3 recruiting cycles, they're going to be able to recruit off of that. And then eventually they'll start the whole cycle. But they might not be able to, because at the end of the day, it's tough. And when money's involved and the brand's involved, TCU is just naturally at a disadvantage, and it's going to take a while to get that stigma, I guess you could say, off of it. But anyway, I hope the Frogs win. I love seeing Michigan lose. It just was a great game. And going on to another game, Georgia,
quickly,
Ohio.
before we go on to that. Speaking about money and brand, and next time there's a big brand that has a head coach opening, Sonny Dykes is going to get every phone call possible because of this one season. I think Aranda had that happen to him this last offseason because he did do well at turning around Baylor. Now he's gonna, that's probably fizzled out a little bit, but Sonny Dykes is about to get really, really rich, if not from TCU, from another big time program that has big time boosters that will just throw money to make sure that their program doesn't suck again.
Could it be that if Sark gets canned, Sonny Dykes gets the call?
Honestly, like they would. I think the Longhorns would. If next year Sark isn't winning 10 games for him and competing for Big 12, Sonny Dykes might be the next Longhorn head coach.
It would not surprise me at all because he's in that area.
For the exact same reasons we're talking about. They want to dominate recruiting. And Sark isn't recruiting poorly, but we all know that they do pretty well NIL wise. Sark would do that and probably add on a different dimension and probably start dominating that Dallas area that Oklahoma and Texas kind of split right now.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, that Sark's feeling the heat. That he's got to win next year. Otherwise, that seat's going to get warm.
And if it's soon, like, would he be able to bring Garrett Riley, Malcolm Kelly, like all the assistants he's got at TCU? Like that makes him that much more appealing.
Yeah, I mean, because you got Garrett Riley, Lincoln Riley's little brother is going to the national championship before Lincoln, and yeah, Garrett's an up and coming guy. You bring him to Texas because you can give him a big pay raise. You give all the guys pay raises; they're going to follow you because a lot of guys followed him from SMU, and so he's going to be able to bring him up again. I would not be surprised. It's funny. Come October, November, we might be talking about this as a legitimate news story because it makes a lot of sense. But maybe Sonny Dykes will just be like, "Hey, I went to the national championship here. I can do it here." I don't know, but when the dollar bills start showing up, and then the recruiting and SEC becomes pretty attractive. So the other playoff game, Georgia, Ohio State. Ohio State was in control, up 14 into the third quarter. Georgia ended up outscoring them 18-3 in the fourth quarter. Noah Ruggles had a shot to win it, on like a 50-yard field goal last second. Talk about a defense falling apart for Ohio State. People are, squawking about Jim Knowles, and even to some degree, people were tweeting about Ryan Day. But I think the Ryan Day talk is ridiculous. I mean, he's like 45-6, and in his head coaching career, I mean, you can't fire him for that. But Jim Knowles' seat's starting to get warm after one season. And Ohio State probably should have won. I mean, at the end of the day. And if they would have had Jackson Smith and Jigba, if Marvin Harrison didn't get knocked out, Travion Henderson was there, Ohio State should have won, honestly. And I mean, at the end of the day, Georgia showed why they're a national championship team or national champion. They figured out how to win. Stetson Bennett made plays when he had to. It's really unfortunate because I was hoping Ohio State would win, but Georgia did it, and I think Georgia probably handles the Hypno-Toads. I felt like TC would have had a better shot against Ohio State.
I don't know what my prediction is for the national championship quite yet, but for that game, I think the talk about Ryan Day is warranted at this point because of the fact of where Ohio State was pre Ryan Day. Like, I think that the analogy that always gets thrown around is Ryan Day was gifted this team on third base and is somehow in the last, how long has he been there? 3 seasons as their head coach, 4 seasons, is now
4, I think.
standing on second. And some people could even say he's back on first. Like, this team went from competing for national championships to being, could they, you know, kind of thinking, are we going to make the playoffs? Is it a stretch that we even make it to the big, or not the Big Ten championship, but now with Michigan, is it possible to make the Big Ten championship every year? Like, Michigan could not beat them with Urban Meyer as their head coach, and now they've lost to him 2 times in a row. Now that Ryan Day's kind of gotten his culture there, like, I think it is fair to, for at least probably for Ohio State fans, it makes more sense for them to be saying this guy needs to go because we are falling from the top of the mountain and we're starting just to become a big brand that should be winning but can't put it together in games that matter. Um, I don't think it happens this year, but if he does, if they lose to Michigan next year, he is probably going to be gone right after that game, no matter what their record is. He could be 11-1, but because he lost to Michigan, it won't matter, and he'll just have to move on. Yeah, the game itself was crazy. I feel terrible for the Ohio State kicker. The moment itself being the kick to get your team to either go home crying or celebrate on the going to the national championship is crazy. But as a fan, that's, you're ringing in the new year devastated or celebrating and having the best time of your life being an Ohio State fan. And it is just probably the worst time, the worst situation, and literally the worst time possible. The first minute of 2023 started with that guy missing a field goal to win the game and move on to national championship. I hope that his teammates and his coaches and his support system is there for him, because fans are ruthless. I mean, Oklahoma is 6-6, and we didn't have an opportunity to even get that close. Imagine if our kicker was put in that exact same situation. We know for a fact there would be some fans that no doesn't represent the whole fan base that is going to do some outlandish shit because they're so frustrated that they lost. Like, kids, at the end of the day, it is just a game, and it affects those players way more than it does us. We just get affected emotionally. Like, that kid probably just lost any prospect of being in the NFL because of that one kick, or at least set himself back a lot because of it. Like that, it didn't just cost him any emotional trauma, it could have cost him financially. So I hope he's all right, and I hope that his friends and family are all there supporting him and trying to do everything to just get his mind off of it, because I'm sure that is not an easy thing to deal with.
I agree. And on that drive where, they had an opportunity to kick that field goal, Ryan Day did run it once. And I thought it was a little bizarre. They ended up having to, I think they had to burn a timeout after that. They would have kept passing. They were moving the ball pretty efficiently. And I felt like as soon as that happened, it just kind of got him out of the rhythm. And then it ended up costing, a 50-yard field goal. I mean, that's a long field goal to win a game, not only just win a game, but go to the national championship. There's not many kickers I feel confident doing that, even from the NFL. Like, I feel good about Justin Tucker, but there's not many Justin Tuckers out there. So
Yeah.
I do agree. I mean, people are ruthless, and Ohio State should have won that game. Mecca Ibuka looked good. Marvin Harrison is the best wide receiver in all of college football, and it's a shame that he got knocked out, because I do think if he was there, it probably would have been different. He's that good. So, all right. Well, do you have any final thoughts, or do you want to do the end of video challenge?
End of video, just tell us what your thoughts are on the bowl season so far. I think it's been excellent. At every bowl game I've watched has been fun to watch. The playoffs are actually good. both games were good. And usually, you see the 4 seed get absolutely smacked, no matter if it's OU or someone else. Usually they get absolutely walloped. This year was good. I think it's a case for why the playoff should be expanded, because you would see a lot more of these really good games, and there'd be some home games. Be pretty cool to have a playoff game in Norman.
I'm telling you, I am so excited for 2024 because that's when OU should be going to the SEC potentially, then the 12-team playoff. A lot of good things. I'm excited for 2023, but 24 is going to be really cool. Home game, playoff games, that's going to be wild. But
Yes.
So made it this far, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. Everything's linked in the description below. And we will continue to pump out content. And I will challenge also everyone, let us know what you want to see this offseason. Is there anything specific you want to see? Because we're going to have to be coming up with a lot of content. And if you're new here, we do a pretty darn good job of trying to keep 2 to 3 videos a week, even during the off season. So let us know if there's anything specific. So we'll catch you guys next time.